It was going to take a village to change some of the dynamics that made it more possible for that catastrophe to have occurred. Make no mistake, the responsibility for it is that of the perpetrator. But there were gaps in understanding, missed opportunities for lawful and ethical information sharing, and therefore not follow up, and a variety of other things. And so we needed to change part of who we were as a community. And Gene Deisinger didn't do that. Actually, Dr. Steger, the president of the institution, had directed the implementation of the threat assessment team well before it was law in Virginia the following year. And I just had the blessing of being asked to help develop that process with them, and then to lead that process eventually. And so regaining that sense of peace and tranquility, but if we were going to enjoy safety again, it had to be all of us, because the police weren't going to do it by themselves.
What is going on, everybody? 'Tis I, the enigma of the gun airwaves, Miyanovich, welcoming you to Season 3 of the Liberal Gun Owner's Lens podcast, where unprecedented perspectives are packed into the cargo hold for the LGO Lens spaceship Voyagio.
That's fucking Italian.
Don't believe that evolution is possible with guns and public safety in America? It's already happening, y'all. Minds are evolving. Think guns versus public safety is the only game in town, do ya? Think culture war is the big boss, do ya? Then keep your ass in the past. Everyone else, all aboard! So I want to move on from the behavior and the law part. And I wanted to ask you this, because this is probably the most important one. So on April 16th, 2007, was the Virginia Tech shooting. It's a big moment in American history, unfortunately, or recent history. 32 dead, 17 wounded. Up until the Mandalay Bay shooting, that was the biggest targeted violence event in our history. The whole world's paying attention, and in their wisdom, Virginia Tech recruits and hires you to respond, to come and essentially make sure that something like this never happens again. That's a giant thing, Gene. Was that giant for you and your wife and your family? Was that what was that like? That was the biggest event like that, like essentially in the world. And they called you and eventually and said, Gene, we want to recruit you and hire you. What was that like?
Yeah, I had the privilege of being asked to work with Virginia Tech fairly soon after the mass casualty incident. Not as their employee, but Iowa State donated my time. And so I went back and forth between Blacksburg and Ames several times in late 2007 through 2008 into early 2009 before I joined. And so I was tremendously flattered to be asked to join in that team. I was at a point in my career at Iowa State where I would say I was fat, dumb, and happy. But I also wasn't feeling particularly challenged, and I already knew that there were significant challenges that needed to be faced. It was going to take a village to change some of the dynamics that made it more possible for that catastrophe to have occurred. Make no mistake, the responsibility for it is that of the perpetrator. But there were gaps in understanding, missed opportunities for lawful and ethical information sharing, and therefore not follow up, and a variety of other things. And so we needed to change part of who we were as a community. And Gene Deisinger didn't do that. Actually, Dr. Steger, the president of the institution, had directed the implementation of the threat assessment team well before it was law in Virginia the following year. And I just had the blessing of being asked to help develop that process with them, and then to lead that process eventually. But it really took all of community to address what needed to happen. And frankly, that community was stunned about what happened. And, by virtue of my background and training, I'm often asked to go to communities where these critical events occur. And every single time, Randy, I'm struck by the fact that somebody, typically more than one, says, I can't believe this happened here. This isn't the sort of place something like this happens. And so they're wounded by that deeply. And that was very much the case at Virginia Tech. And so regaining that sense of peace and tranquility, But if we were going to enjoy safety again, it had to be all of us, because the police weren't going to do it by themselves.
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenge just I would imagine, in terms of how sullen the vibe must have been like for a year or two or whatever. Perhaps with your experience, you're more used to that. But that vibe, they raise buildings over that. Like when these things happen inside of a school, the vibration is so bad that's left over, they knock the building down and build another one.
Which was part of the discussion at Virginia Tech. They ultimately chose not to. But there were many in the community that were dissatisfied with that response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
These events, I always call them low volume, high social impact, right? So they're rare. I don't mean to downplay how often they happen, but in terms maybe of other things, the casualties related or the deaths related to these things aren't maybe as large as other things.
Sure.
A number of these things strung in a row can tear a society apart almost. I don't think most people realize, if it happens, I'm from Pittsburgh, so the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, man, Gene, we used to push my oldest daughter past that synagogue all the time in the stroller.
Yeah.
We live real close to it. And now when you go back and you walk by it, it's a competing thing. It's a competing memory between how awesome it was to push my first daughter past that and then this fucking horrendous thing. I'm glad they chose you for that. How long were you at Virginia Tech doing that?
Just shy of 6 years, I guess it was.
Okay. Did you retire after that
I retired from Virginia Tech. That was after 30 years of government service work in universities primarily. Then I retired from that to just focus on threat assessment and management for a broad range of clients. But I do want to go back to that. I
Go for it.
Want to emphasize, I agree with you that threat assessment and management is one tool in our approach to this, but threat assessment and management is secondary and tertiary prevention, not primary prevention. And if we really want to get ahead of this, we need to get to primary prevention. And one of the things that we don't do, and I've been arguing this for years, when a plane goes down or a train goes off the tracks, NTSB does an all causes analysis, a root cause analysis of what led to the incident. Was it operator error? Was it an equipment failure? Was it some unforeseeable circumstance, etc.? And then whatever those things are, we identify as problematic, or they do. There are corrective measures, not just, it's too late for that aircraft or that train, but across the industry. It changes how we fly, how we travel by train. We don't do that at all for significant acts of violence. There's some limited research, but it's not an exhaustive analysis of it to see where beyond the risk factors for the individual, beyond the possession of a handgun or a rifle. By the way, we have a tremendous number of mass knifings in this country that goes unnoticed as well. And so I know the focus here is about firearms, but that's one part of the issue as well. And we're not really engaging in a robust effort to understand. Now, threat assessment and how that field has evolved over the 30 plus years I've been doing it has made some headway with it, but it by itself isn't getting all the answers and isn't likely to.
Multiple cogs in the machine. If you don't mind me asking, because I know I've certainly have looked over the sort of the summaries of that event at Virginia Tech. I'm sure you poured over all of the psychological information. One of the things that I talked to with Dr. Stephanie Leida is this thing that keeps popping up. And before I say it, I need to put the statements out first. One, I'm going to talk about autism. And so we need to understand that people with autism are more likely to be victims of crime than they are to perpetrate crime. They're more likely to be victims of violence than they are to perpetrate violence. That's certainly the case. But we are seeing inside of the collection or population of mass shooters that many of these mass shooters are on the spectrum, or they have autism, they're diagnosed as Asperger's or something like that. So there seems to be a subset of this specific disorder that combines with other things in a unique way to contribute somewhat to these things. And this shooter is another one of these instances. Did you come across that information? Did you guys discuss it? Do you think about it? Is this something that's on your radar at all, or do you think it's a nothing burger?
I don't think it's a nothing burger, but I think there's a few things. One, it is not, if you're talking about the Virginia Tech perpetrator as a reference point, it's not fully clear the degree to which autism was present with that. There are other diagnosed conditions that probably had a significant contributory effect, but it weren't the main cause for it. But I think what it would also overstate it to say that many of the mass shooters have strong indications of autism. There is a disproportionate number of them that do, but I would also caution that over the last few years, there's been an increase in the overall diagnostic rate of autism. That is, there's more people in our communities who are believed to be living with aspects of the autistic experience. And so that shooters are also shouldn't be terribly surprising because they are a subset of the broader population. So I would be careful that we not overinterpret that. What I tell folks during threat assessment, our challenge as threat assessors is not whether most people with autism are violent, and they're not, or whether they're nonviolent. Is this person's autism or this person's depression or this person's non-diagnostic lack of well-being and poor stress management contributing to risk?
Yeah.
Which is a much more phenomenological perspective than this broad brush about any particular diagnostic class.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that approach probably has more utility overall. If there are larger trends in it, then yeah, we should see how those are contributing. But I can't say that I see a huge increase beyond the rate of the population with clearly recognized aspects of autism.
I mean, desensitization seems to be a part here with, let's take the autism out, but just strong desensitization of the individual. And I guess that's a complex phenomenon.
Well, it is. And particularly if we're talking specifically about mass violence there, then yes, that desensitization is often a co-occurring factor. And let's face it, we're in this cauldron of hateful rhetoric and violent rhetoric and expressions of violence. I don't mean just incidental exposure to violent media. Some of us grew up reading Stephen King and didn't become killers, right? But there is just so much modeling for maladaptive and harmful ways of dealing with things we don't like, whether it's hate-based or whether it's just the extremity of the rhetoric broadly. I think that's a huge factor in why we're seeing this increase in mass violence. I think for all of us, the stress of the pandemic, regardless of what your views are about the reality of the pandemic or vaccinations or anything else, it's undeniable that there was a surge in violence that really only went down this last year in terms of serious violent crime, right? So homicides are down in 2023 slightly. They're still well above what they were prior to 2020, right? So there was a change there. And I think that co-occurring, the anxiety from, I'll say all of us, at least most of us, with the co-occurring socio-political angst and strife, I think has been a huge part of all of this.
Yeah. I think the internet allows people who perseverate and can't break loops to build personally, as my opinion is we've been on this planet as a species for 300,000 years. It's an unprecedented exposure to the psychology. And while I would never say the internet is bad or something like that, I do think our psychology and certain people in our population are extra vulnerable to, if they perseverate without it, it allows them to just grind and grind and grind. And I don't think we fully have an understanding of how bad that is yet for certain people. Some people, like John said, certain people with the internet and social media, they seem to be able to parachute in and just get out, and,
Right.
and it's not a big deal. But other people jump in and they can't get out. Like it just grinds. Right?
Yeah, and candidly, some of those tools are designed to facilitate that, to make it harder and harder to disengage, because it's just it's triggering that reward system. And so, one, you've got people that seek out an echo chamber that validate their sense of grievance and the okayness to use violence to address it. And then there's, frankly, other people with their own grievances that would like to keep Randy mired in that crap and that cesspool of hate and anger and vitriol and, escalation to let's do something about it. They're not ever going to. But by golly, if we can get Randy around, I mean, that's very intentional. And then if we add to some of our friends around the world who do not have this country's best interests at heart, purposely trying to agitate all of that. And now with the tools with artificial intelligence, it is terrifying to me, the capabilities we put into the hands of people with malicious intent.
Yeah. AI is something that I brought up on this podcast last year, and we want to talk about intensifiers to gun-related negatives. I see it as one because it's just going to spin people up in a way that we don't even have the psychology to understand where this can go. Not even the people that create it do. And we were talking about the limits of policy and the limits of governance and the limits of law. I don't know if you saw any of the Senate hearings on AI safety, but they're all there admitting the government moves too slow for this. Like, this thing is just going to take off. How are we supposed to know how to deal with this if you guys don't know how to deal with it? So it definitely is. It's terrifying to me. I see it as one of the biggest threats. I don't know if you're familiar with Jonathan Haidt's work on what social media has been doing to specifically teenage girls. It's been degrading their mental health at a rate it's not that it's great with the boys, but it's really bad with the girls. And
we've seen that corresponding with increased emergency department visits for 12 to 17-year-old females. It just skyrocketed. At about a year into the pandemic, was the largest elevation, and then it set a whole new plateau for suicidal behavior among adolescent girls.
Yeah. So I don't know if Jonathan Haidt's been doing work on that. He's also about to publish a book, or he's finishing it, but he's done a couple papers on it. I have 2 teenage girls. We've had negative effects, and they don't even have social media. So very serious stuff, particularly if somebody can't get out. They have a tendency to loop and obsess anyway.
Yeah.
And they're with this machine that the human brain is just not designed to be like looped into. So This is another, I've said this to somebody, that the combination between mass shootings and AI to me is something that sends up a red flag, like something that could make it worse, which would lead us into like the last question that I would have for you today, because we're at about an hour. How do you see the future trend line going? So if I'm talking to Mark Fullman, he's saying that mass shootings in public, mass shootings in houses of worship, and mass shootings in schools all up about 3x from, let's say, 20 years ago or something like that. That's what he would say. John would say mass shootings in public and mass shootings in churches or houses of worship are up 3x. But schools, if you look at them at kind of the 3-year increment, they're kind of the same. It's all bullshit. It's all crazy. It's all apeshit. It's all completely unacceptable. How do you see it? Like, where are we headed? Is it getting any better? Do you see it getting worse?
Well, if you look at violent deaths at schools, it's ebbed and flowed. There's not a marked trend line. If you look at shootings in schools, there's been a huge increase in the last few years, and thankfully most of the people impacted by that are surviving it. But the school-associated violent deaths has bounced up and down, and I have a hard time seeing a particular trend with it. I think as problematic as where we've been the last few years in particular, I think that's likely to worsen, at least in the near future. Now, one of the things I know about the human experience is it's not statically linear. And so while it's been on an upward trend largely over the last several years, my guess is that what will happen is that this is an oversimplification. It will get bad enough that we'll finally get off our ass and do what needs to be done, because it'll reach a level of intolerance for enough of our population that we don't want to live like this anymore, because the rest of the world doesn't, except in battle zones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I have some hope for that, but I'm like you, I am deeply disturbed about what AI how that might continue to contribute to this, which we've already seen. And when the creators of many of these different AI systems get together and for a meeting and say, hey, there's anywhere between a 5 and a 20% chance of an extinction level event for humanity in the next decade. Let's put a moratorium on further development until we really understand how to keep the genie in the bottle, because we don't.
Yeah.
And we didn't do it.
We did. And that's why I haven't said much. And I just did one podcast on it and sort of started a paper. But I see the combination of a number of features here. And if 1-2 mass shootings a year can tear us apart, and if the first iteration of AI through social media can get us spun up, what does that mean if things increase? In addition to the things that you've talked about, which is, like what's going on with our society and tribalism and people fucking with us from other countries, it doesn't look great. And I've said maybe this will inform you. Maybe this will be the one thing I can give to Gene Deisinger, because I've been inside of guns professionally for 6 years now, full time, looking at this stuff. It really would only, and this is related to the AR-15. I don't really want to get too back into that too much, but what we haven't seen is a mass shooting with a semi-automatic rifle where the operator really knew how to operate it. We have never seen that. I wouldn't consider the Mandalay Bay guy a guy who knew how to really operate. He had a lot of them. He had a lot of semi-autos. I'm talking about somebody who knows how to operate the AR-15. So the stuff that happens in the gun community and training, where you have fast mag swap outs and people are on point and they know how to take a full load out of 7 magazines, a standard loadout, and maximize the platform completely. And you have people that it's on the internet, you can learn how to do it. We've seen one of these companies, training companies, took a kid who was an online gamer who only did shooting with online stuff and airsoft, and for the first time ever brought him to the range and just gave him an AR-15 and let him do what he did with airsoft, with switch outs and all that. And the kid was deadly. I mean, he was just like perfect. He had never shot a live round before, and he was ringing it, and bringing it, and could switch the magazines and all of that stuff. It would only take 2 of those to happen where we get that on camera, a security camera, for everything to change. And it's not really that far. From my estimation, it's really not. All you need is these kinds of kids that we've had before, but they link on to being able to learn through the internet to maximize a platform like that. And then they go into a place that doesn't have any security, or a school or vulnerable people. And we see that twice. If we see it once, maybe society doesn't change fully. Maybe we kind of get to where you're talking about, where it's like we're fucking done. But if that happens twice, I'll guarantee you we reach that spot, because it's just too disgusting. It's too disgusting.
Yeah. Well, one, I hope we don't get to that. I share your belief that we likely will, and that hopefully that will be the change. But you know what? In December of 2012, as I sat, I was doing training in Lowell, Massachusetts, not that far from Sandy Hook. And I sat in the hotel bar that night looking up at that screen and fully believing, surely, losing 20 small children, surely this will change things.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
We can do one Sandy Hook in a lifetime, and we've had now basically 2, 3, whatever your metrics are. That's why the first thing that I did when I became executive director was started looking into school shootings. 3 days after that, I was on the phone with John. Yes, we have other problems with guns. Yes, it's terrible. The things that happen in the inner city reality with black on black violence. There's so many things. There's the intimate partner violence thing. Every 4 hours, a man is shooting a woman. It's terrible, man. It's all terrible. But this one particularly can rip us apart. And so I'm not the smartest guy. I'm not the most powerful guy. Liberal gun owners isn't this big thing. But I will say this. After I looked at the situation, I just wanted to make sure that there was at least one gun organization in the United States that would not respond to a Sandy Hook the way that the NRA did, which was a jack shit. It was bullshit. It was bullshit. So there is at least one gun organization that if these things happen, I will say, I understand why this happens. It's terrible. And my response isn't from my cold dead hands or but my rights or something like that. That's all I can bring to the table for now. Is there's somebody the world can talk to that's not the fucking NRA. But let me ask you, so let me ask you one more question as we get out of here. I know you're an important man. You need to go. When are you going to retire? Not retire and then do this other business. When are you going to retire?
Well, I've retired twice, and I'm not smart enough to stay down either way. There's Bob Martin was a captain of the Los Angeles Police Department, and I remember talking with him, and I said, Bob, when are you going to retire? You've been doing this a long time. He's been a cop since I was born, or I had been at that time. And he said, you know what? The day it's not fun anymore, and not that the topic is fun, but it's challenging. I work with great people trying to do what we can to make a difference, not only about mass violence, but the whole spectrum of violence that impacts our communities and our fellow citizens in that. We're coming up on a time where I need to make room for people that are younger, that have more vitality, that are smarter than I am, and not take up air at the top or wherever that I am. I still think most days I'm that armadillo beside the road, but nonetheless. So I don't know. I'm not there yet. I will say that a dear friend and colleague of mine, Rich Wilson, who started the threat management team at Arizona State University, actually before I started the one at Iowa State, which I didn't know at the time. But since he retired, he and I had the privilege of working with him on these projects. And so a year ago now, I called him up and I said, hey, Rich, I've got these projects and I'm so excited. And these will be fun. He listened to me so politely. And he said, Gene, you're going to have a lot of fun with those. And I said, no, I meant us. He said, no, I know what you meant. You'll have a lot of fun with those. I said, what do you mean? This is the stuff you love to do, Rich. And he said, yep, I do. But it's reached a point where to stay on top of it, to be as well versed in what we need to be to operate at our level for what our clients expect out of us has taken too much out of me. Yeah. And I'm not going to do it anymore. And so this time during COVID, with more time with my spouse, more time with my grandkids, I've just got other priorities now. And he actually helped me draw some threads together of some of what I've been feeling the last few years, but couldn't quite articulate. I'm not quite there, but I don't think I'm too far away.
Yeah. Gene, it's a lot. Like I'm just an advocate for threat assessment, a super advocate, and keeping up with that and the other things that I have to keep up with guns and the gun-related negatives and all the positives but we didn't, there are a lot of positives to gun ownership. The rights aspect is important. It's fucking exhausting, man. Yeah, it is like mentally so exhausting. So I feel you, and you deserve it when you decide. I just need to squeeze some more out of you before you leave. Like, let's get some friendship going. Let me get you podcasts and shit.
I'll be around for a while. I've got some things in the hopper that I'm really excited about, and so I'll be around for a little bit. I want to keep rattling some cages here and there. So.